So did you guys get time to go over the code yesterday? All of you have this code, right? I mean, it's the same code we have been working on for last 2 days. I have, right? Okay. Introduction to this code, this book. Yeah, all of you have this, right? Okay. If you
Sir, I don't have
you do not have this.
this book, sir. Introduction to Python Programming. I'm not getting the link.
No, you will not get the link. What you need to do is log into LMS.
Yes.
You can see the recording, right?
Yes, sir.
Just below the recording, there will be a Dropbox link.
Okay.
You have to click to that link, go there, and then download.
Okay, sir.
No, this is you'll get PDFs as well as this code. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Any questions?
So in the tuple, what are the operations that are followed by the tuples? Like append, remove, close, and the others.
So for now, yesterday we discussed that for now you should only remember how to define a tuple, how to index a tuple,
Yes,
and that tuple is immutable,
yes.
and tuple unpacking. For now, only remember this.
Okay.
That will be sufficient enough for this course.
Okay, sir.
This is better? Yeah, take this if you can figure out. Just figure out if you have anything else. Yeah. Okay. Any other question? Uh-huh. Here, asterisk here in the IN sign, if there is asterisk, it means this cell is running. So if you have seen asterisk for a long time, it basically means two things. A, either you have written something which takes a lot of time to process, or you have gone into an infinite loop. If you have, okay, guys who are online, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So if you end up in an infinite loop or any program that is taking way too long than expected, the best way is to restart. Right. So if you restart, you will lose everything that you have run, and you have to start from the beginning. You can try out reconnect, right? But in my experience, reconnect usually does not work. Restart is like starting from beginning. Your code will be there, but everything that you have created will be lost. Everything written will be there, but everything that is in the runtime memory, those will be lost. So if you remember, we discussed, right? Restart basically deletes the connection and reconnects. So everything gets wiped out. Yes. I mean, you can try out reconnect. If it works, fine. But then if you restart, there is no, everything will get. Shutdown will stop the connection, right? What? I mean, tell me your question. Type. What was the command? Type.
Yes, this one. Below that, I mean, then I will come like class and output in output.
This.
This you will get the error one. So I think even that.
This one.
Above that. Yes. I think above you have to define x first and then it will done.
Downstairs. Want me to run this, right?
Yes, sure. Okay, and below that you step. Below and below. Yes, here an image ready, and after that you have assigned the image ready one. Now dirx, that one.
Yeah.
I think the one where we are converting complex to Boolean, you can if integer number, there is one line. You cannot convert complex to integer.
Yeah. So you got an error or you got something else? Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Anything else? Any other question? No questions? Yes. How to define my own function? Okay. Yes. Definition of function. Anything else?
Sir, this is Shilpi here. So, sir, I was not able to download the IPy notebook documents from us. So, if after the class you can show me how to download it, so I'll be able to go through the codes before the next class next weekend.
Sure. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes. Anything else? No. Okay. So let's start with defining a function. Now, the way you define a function is you start with def, which basically means this is the syntax which tells Python that now whatever you write is the name of the function. Then you write the name of the function, right? Followed by a bracket, right? Within this bracket, you write if this function needs some input from the user, right? Not all functions will need input, but if it does, then you will have to write the name of the input variables here, right? Now, when you write the name of the input variables, What you can also do is you can give default values to them. So if, say for example, I'm saying num1 and num2. So basically, let's say this function can take two numbers as input from the user. And then I'm saying num2 equal to 3, which means that even if the user does not give a value for num2, this program will take 3 as the default value. Then within that, once you enter, you will see that this becomes an indented structure, right? The cursor does not go back to the beginning. Now within this, you can write docs or documentation for this function. You can write documentation for this function, right? Now documentation of a function basically starts with 3 inverted comma and ends with 3 inverted comma. Whatever you write here will be part of the documentation of the function. Now once you have written the documentation, and you can place this anywhere in the function, right? It is not necessary that you have to write it at the beginning. You can place it anywhere. Now
Sir, in case
documentation basically means that if I write the name of the function and give a question mark, whatever you write here will be printed. Usually in the documentation, you should talk about what this function does, so that a user can understand. Yes. What was the question from online?
if we're going to give num1 and num2 passing these two integers, then 3 will not work.
No, then if you give any value to num2, then that will override the value 3.
Okay, fine, sir.
Let's say I want to return that. What is the result when I divide num1 by num2? Then I will say return num1 by num2. This return statements ensure that when you run this function, you get this result as the return. Return means you can store this result in any data structure. Yes. So these are all possible options that are available when you are defining a function. I'm sorry, normally what? Not garbage value. Num1 will take the value that the user, see, if you are the user and you are calling this function, whatever value you pass here, say when I say 32 here, num1 will take the value 32. If I give any value after comma, then num2 will take that value. If I do not give anything, num2 will take the value 3.
In case if we are not passing anything.
Yes. So num1 is mandatory, num2 is optional. Yes. If the user does not give any value, it will throw error. If you do not give any value, you will get an error. If you give one value, it will be assigned to num1. If you give two values, it gets assigned to num1 and num2. If you pass any value in the second option, that this value will be taken and 3 will be ignored. 3 will only be taken if the second parameter is not passed. This is the default value. What if? So let's say if I run this, I'll get, so what is happening here? Oh, sorry, I have not run this. Sorry.
I think position is matter.
What?
Position is matter. Actually, it is.
Why do you think position?
When we are
Why do you think position matters?
and when we are sending code and number is for it is taking for as a number for number, not for number.
So what I'm saying is, I mean, yes. Tell me, why am I getting? What is the problem if this error is not shown? I mean, what if Python did not show this error?
We need to pass.
No. So that's the general statement. I'm saying that the problem is default value. So if you want to keep any variable without a default value, that should be passed first. The reason being, Python function, any Python function usually takes the first value that you pass as the first argument. Now, when I say that I am giving a default value for the first one and I'm not giving a value for the second one, it means that if I pass one value, that should get assigned to the second one, which violates the variable assignment that Python follows. Python follows that if you pass one variable, it will be assigned to the first variable, right? So if this error would have not been shown, then this function would have not worked, because when I pass 4 here, it is basically being assigned to num1. Num2 does not have any value. Then the function will not work. So if you have to give any default value or to any variable, that variable should always come second. All variables for which you do not have default value will come first. After that, default values will start coming, because Python assigns values in a sequential way. If I say, for example, take 3 variables here. If I take 3 variables, then what I can do is I can assign default values for the second and the third, and I can ignore the first one. If I run this, should this work?
It will work.
This will work, right? Because whatever default values I'm assigning after I've mentioned all the non-default variables, right? So then when I run this, what you have to understand the logic. So if I just write 4, Python will only give this variable to num1. If I write 4, 2, Python will give 4 to num1, 2 to num2. If I write 4, 2, 4, then each of these variables will get their value. That's why it is essential that all the non-default variables should be written first. All the default variables come after that, because that's the only way by which you can assign or call the function. It depends on the position, right? So whatever you write in the first position goes to the first position.
Right, sir.
Yes, if num2 is not having any default value, that's fine. This will also work. But this will not work. This will not work. I have not run this. This will not work, right? Because understand the reason. What is the problem with this? So here you see, you have given default values to the first and the third variable, right? Now, ideally, if I pass one single value, it should get assigned to the second variable, but Python does not assign that way. Python assigns it in a sequential way. You pass one value, it gets assigned to the first variable. Now, the problem is if I run this, num1 gets 4, num2 has no value. So you get an error with this function. So position is very important. So The way Python assigns values in a function is in the same order that you have defined. Yes.
And in case we are going to put
I mean,
four,
what you can do is, if you really need to give no default values for num2, just remove it from the second position and keep it in the first position. I mean, nobody told you that it has to be in the second position, right? Just keep it in the first position. Then this will work. Yes.
what in case like if num2 is in between and we are going to put in function name 4, 3, 4. So it will work, right?
Yes. If no, the problem is if num2 is in between, you are violating the assignment, right? You are violating the assignment property, because then I can also supply just a number, and then that number should be assigned to the second position, which
Right.
is not true. Which is not true in case of Python. That's why all the default arguments should be mentioned towards the end. All the non-default should be mentioned first. Yes.
Okay. If we are even if we are
One
going
second.
to put we're going to assign numbers like they're in function name.
I
Even
mean,
after
the first argument, if the first argument has a default value, then everything should have default value.
correct.
I mean, I can write this. I can write this. Everything has a so if you start with the first function, have first variable having default value, then everything to the right should also have default value.
Right. If we are passing like three integers, it will not have any impact either. Uh, like it's like by default, but like okay, well that's fine. I got it.
I ran it, right? So now I have given default values for everything, right? So now even if I do not pass anything, this should give a value. No, right? Because I have started with default value for the first, but I have given default value for everything. So once you start giving a default value, everything to the right should also have default value. Right? So one divided by 1 into 3 is how much? Division is done first, followed by multiplication. Where? Green means Python keyword. Blue means name function. No. Name of the function. Name of any. Yes, numbers are always written in green. So this is not a Python functionality. This is the functionality of Jupyter node. Yes. Any question on definition of the function? Now,
Sequential assignment, sorry.
yes. Sequential assignment.
Sequential assignment is for function, right? Not for whole Python standards.
What do you mean by whole Python?
I mean, it's not generic or standard for Python coding thing. It's just for function thing that it's assigning a value sequentially, right?
Yeah, if you call any object, the assignment is always sequential.
So it's a Python standard, we can see, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Now, did you guys write your own function? All of you, okay. Now tell me, let's say I have not given any default value for this. Or let's say, so I'm giving default value for this. Okay, I'll come back to it. Okay. Now, any question on definition of function? No questions? Okay. How do you, so let's do a small exercise. So define a function which takes one string as input, checks whether it is a string or not, and then reverses the string. Yes. If it is not a string, nothing should happen. Okay. So what you have to do is input a string, check if it is a string, and then reverse. All of you understand what has to be done? Okay. Use whatever, I mean, whatever we have covered, whatever we have covered. Done? People who are online, is there anybody who is not able to do it? Please let me know if you are not able to do it. Okay, now if everybody online has done it, people who are from online, tell me what should I write here?
Instance should be written here to check whether it is str or not. And if instance is giving a true result, then we'll proceed with the reversion of the string.
Okay, so if is instance, what should I write here? String.
String comma str.
Okay. Then what should I do?
Then string should be printed from -1 position.
What should I do? Did anybody write this code? From, no, you guys, okay. People who are online.
So print bracket start, double quotes, comma -1 to
Double
0,
quotes, comma, -1.
-1 to 0.
Tell me the exact syntax. Ping me the exact syntax.
Is there any reverse function we have for string? Like we are going to assign this string in a variable like x, and after x dot reverse or something is there.
No, there is no reverse function. Will this work? This will work?
I think we have to define another list and then to go over the original list, then outline another list. And then return that list.
This is fine, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is instance checks whether a particular this string is string or not. Yeah, you can write if type is equal to str. That's also fine.
So we can write in the string bracket -1 is the starting, then 0.
Yeah, I mean you can write that as well. You can write -1 and then 0 as well.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if you write 0, the problem is the first alphabet will be ignored.
Okay.
Right? So this you can ignore. Leave it as blank.
Okay, sir.
So if you want to use type, you write if type of string is equal to str. Rest remains same. Is there anybody who was not able to write this? I mean, please let me know, otherwise it gets difficult, right? Yeah, approach can be totally different. That's absolutely fine. But the code, you should be able to do this, right? The approach can be different. Okay. Now, so all of you are comfortable on defining a function?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We have not covered that, right? Only use whatever we have covered. That's the limitation. Okay. Yes. Any question on string? Sorry, was there a question from online? Any question on functions?
No, sir.
Okay. No questions here, right? All of you are clear till or to whatever we have covered here?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, you see, we have defined a lot of functions, right? And all the functions that we have defined, there is a drawback. The drawback is once you have defined that function stays in the computer's runtime memory forever. Forever as in as long as your code is running, right? Say for example, if I have defined this function reversal, this function is stored in the computer's memory and is occupying some amount of space, and it will keep on occupying that space as long as I am running this session. All of you agree with that? Now, there is a second type of functions known as lambda function. Lambda functions are same as normal everyday function that we have looked at. The only difference is these functions exist only once, right? This function exists, or these functions will exist as long as you are just running the code of that function. As soon as the code finishes, the function is not stored. Now, why would we want to build such a function? The reason we would want to build such a function is there are often cases, or there are often analysis or transformations that you do only once. Say for example, let's say you have age of people, or say you have income of people as one of the variable, right, in any analysis. Now income usually comes in lakhs, right? So there will be unnecessarily 4 or 5 zeros that will be present throughout, right? Unnecessary large numbers. Let's say we want to convert everything to lakhs, right? So what happens? 4 lakhs becomes 4. 4.5 lakhs becomes 4.5, right? So everything has to be divided by 10 to the power 5. But we do it only once, right? If we build a function which takes a variable and divides it by 10 to the power 5, that function will have use only once throughout my analysis. So there is no need to store that function, right? All of you agree with that? Because I am only using this once, right? There is no need to store this. So in cases, mostly in transformations, right, where you use that transformation only once in the analysis, you will define lambda functions for them just to optimize the amount of memory you consume. If you define normal functions, that will also work, but it's just that you will be consuming some extra bit of memory. To optimize that, you define lambda functions, which are just like use and throw kind of functions, which only exist as long as the code is running. So what do I mean by that? Let's say I define, so all of you remember list comprehension? Okay. Now,
Sir,
yes.
sir, I'm a bit late, but I do have a question. I tried to do that thing, finding the type of the number entered is a string or not. So I sent you the code as well, the one I write. Here I'm entering the number 5, or I'm entering the any character.
Can I get back to this after some time?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Okay, now we were talking about lambda functions, right? So let's see how you can define a lambda function first, and then we'll understand the logic, right? The way you define a lambda function is you write lambda, and then you write the argument, right? Then you write a colon, and then whatever you want to do with that argument. Okay, now let's take an example. Let's say I have a list of income. We are talking about income, right? So let's say I have a list of income. So X is equal to these are all lists of income. Okay. You see unnecessary, there are 5 zeros after everyone. I want to reduce the scale and bring them all to lakhs, right? So how do I do this? How do I transform this variable? One way is I write a function and I apply that function to each and every number, right? So one way is, what I can do is I write map. Now map is a function which takes any other function and applies it to every element of a list, right? So I take map, and then what I do is I give name of the function. So let's say I have defined the function as x divided by So I write map, and then I write SQ, and then I write X. Okay. So what this will do is, and obviously I have to convert it to a list. I'm coming to it, right? So you see what one way of converting this list of numbers to lakhs is I have to somehow divide every number by 10 to the power 5. Now to divide every number by 10 to the power 5, I defined a function which takes a number and divides it by 10 to the power 5. Now then what I do is I use a function called map. Now what map does is map takes two arguments. In the first argument, it takes a function. In the second argument, it takes a list. Then what it does is it applies that function to every element of the list. So what this is doing is it is taking the SQ function. Do you understand SQ function? It is just dividing it by dividing the number by 10 to the power 5. It is taking the SQ function, applying it to the first element, taking SQ function, applying it to the second element, third element, fourth element, and then returning the resultant. Right? So you see, this is one way of transforming this variable. But the problem with this way is, I mean, you can do this. This is absolutely correct. But the problem is now this SQ function I will never use. This is the only place I will use this, but it will exist as long as I am running this code. It will occupy some bit of memory. On one function is an object which is defined in a computer's memory. It occupies some portion of the memory, very less portion, but still some portion, right? Now, to optimize your code, if you only want a function to exist once, you will use Lambda function. Now, Lambda functions are defined runtime. Runtime means within the map itself, I will define the Lambda function. So what I will do is, Lambda function starts with the word lambda. And since this function only exists at the runtime, I do not need to give a name to it because I will no longer be referring to that anyway. I only will be referring to it here, right? You understand? Say for example, if I only want to use one substance once, I do not need a name for it, right? I will just use and throw it. If I want to refer it later, I need a name. So lambda functions are usually not given any name. So that's why you see after lambda, there is no name. I just write the name of the input variable. Right? And then what? Then a colon. In the function statement also you give colon. What is the format of defining function? EF, name of the function, within bracket the variables, then colon. Now here also we are following the same approach, but lambda function does not need a name. So name is ignored, right? And all the arguments here, since I need a single argument or a single variable as parameter, I give the parameter here. Then after colon, I have to define what this function does, right? So I define x, sorry. So I define x by 10 to the power 5, right? This is the body of the function. This portion is just the body. X is the name of the input variable. There is no name of the function. That's what I'm saying, right? Name is only required if you want to call that function later. You don't put it in brackets. We don't put it in brackets. Now, I mean, lambda functions are not given any name. So name is ignored. Then there are no brackets. It directly goes to the body, right? In the body, you write what you want to do with x. Once you have written what you have to do with x, then it completes the function definition. This whole is the function definition. Now, if I run this, I will get the exact same output. But what is the advantage? I am not storing this logic because I don't need it. This first x is basically this x, right? And this is basically this.
And what is the x that is at the last
Okay,
after comma?
I have given the same name, right? So let me change the name. This is the name of the list on which, remember what map does. Map takes a function, applies it to a list. So map takes two argument, function, list. This is the everything before the comma is the function. Everything after the comma is the list.
Okay, got it.
Map is a Python based function. What it does is it takes a user defined function or any other function and applies it to a list. Yes. No need, exactly. No need. So that's the whole point of Lambda function, right? If you are only using a function once, define a Lambda function. That's the point.
Like Lambda is associated with map. If we are going to use Lambda, we have to use map.
Lambda, obviously, I mean, Lambda exists only in the runtime, right? And if you have defined a function, you need to use that function somewhere. So it is usually accompanied by a map.
Any another function which we can use in map?
Sorry?
Any another thing apart from Lambda that we can use in map?
You can use a user defined function as well. I mean, I'm saying that, let's say if you are doing a transformation which you will reuse later, then you can use that function name directly. Yes, you were saying.
Fine, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So if you remove the list, remember a map directly does not return a list. It returns an object which is known as map type. So what you will need to just do is convert it to a list. Actually, this is a problem with Python 3. If you do it in Python 2, it by default returns a list. In Python 3, this is the problem. You just have to convert it to a list. Yes. Even the if you divide anything, it will always come as a float. Now, you're talking about passing multiple arguments, right? Yes, you can pass multiple arguments, but not with map. Can you tell me why? Exactly. With a map, if you understand, a map operates element wise, right? One element at a time. There is no concept of two inputs that will be taken together. Not with map, but there are other functions that we'll look at where you can have multiple arguments.
So in case if we need to put two arguments.
Excuse me, not able to see anything.
Okay, so people who are
Yes.
sorry, I lost you. So Where did I lose you? Were you able to see this particular line?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Sorry. What were you saying?
Saying that so we can define a list through map also instead of saying
So I was saying, if you're going to pass two
You can use a
arguments,
map to define a list as well, but the input should also be another list.
say if we are going to pass two arguments, then map will not work, right?
Map will not work because map will always take one element at a time.
Fine.
Okay, now map is one of the options of applying a function. Now understand what map does. Map takes any function, be it a lambda function or be it any function, and applies it element wise, right? Now there are two more ways of applying a function. The second one, if you don't feel the map is the right way to apply the function, the second way to apply that function is reduce. Now what does reduce do? What reduce will do is, reduce always takes two elements at a time, two consecutive elements at a time, and then what it will do is it will result in one element at a time. Now what do I mean by that? So if I run this, what they have removed reduce. Just give me a second. Huh?
So in my notebook, it is showing, it is giving the
It's
documentation.
giving the value. So you are using Python 3 or 2?
I think I'm using Python 2. I'm not sure actually.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I suspected. Okay. So I'm using Python 3, but anyhow I'll explain what it does, right? So if I run this, what it will do is it takes the first two elements, right? So these two are the inputs. So X will take value 1, Y will take value 2. Then it will give you an output X into Y. What is the outcome? 2 into 1, 2. Then what it will do is, it will take the resultant of the first iteration as the first argument and 3 as the second argument. So what is the result? 6. Then it will take the resultant of the second operation as the first argument and 4 as the second argument. What will be the outcome? 24.
44.
Then it will take the resultant of the third iteration as the first element and 5 as the second element and give you
120.
the outcome. So basically what you will get is 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5. Factorial 5, right? So this is what reduce does. It takes a list, it operates pairwise,
Hello.
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 Yeah, it is not audible here.
I think we are not in touch with the trainer, right? So if
Yes, we are not.
the voice calls, let's wait until he is responding.
Yeah. People who are online, can you hear me now? I got logged off again. Now, again, coming back to the reduce function, what it does is it takes a list as input, operates pairwise. First, it will take the first two numbers, get the value, then the next number, and so on, and gives you a single resultant value. Now, the uses can be finding things like product of a whole list, sum of the whole list, and so on, right? Um, in analysis, particularly, you will not see reduce being used so much unless you are doing something which is out of ordinary. Reduce type. You have to convert it to a list. I mean, sorry, the output will be a number. Next, filter, right? This is again, this is an important aspect of Python, and we'll be using this later on quite exhaustively. Filter basically helps you to shorten or find out a subset of a list. Now, let's say what I need is, let's say I have a filter of, I have a list of ages, right? And I need all the ages below 30, right? So it's basically getting to a subset of this list, right? Or filtering the list using some sort of criteria. Now, filtering a list can be done using a filter function. What this filter function does is it takes as argument a lambda function or a user defined function which returns a boolean as output. So remember, whatever function you use within filter should return a boolean as the output, right? Boolean means true false. Okay. Now, within filter, same as the map function. What is the first argument? First argument is the function itself. Okay. Let's say I am using lambda function. So I start with lambda, right? And then I take the argument. Again, it works element wise, right? So I can take only one argument at a time, followed by a colon, followed by, if I want to select everything which is less than 30, what will I do? I'll write x less than 30, right? And then what is the second argument? Second argument is the list itself, right? Now filter on its own will list a will give you a filter object as output in Python 3. In Python 2 you'll get a list. I need to convert this to a list since I'm using Python 3. And now if I run this, what I will basically get is every age that is less than 30, right? So remember two things. Forget reduce, will not anyway use it. Remember two things, map and filter. Map takes a function as argument and applies that function to every element of that list. Now that function might be a lambda function, might be a normal user defined function, might be a function which is already inbuilt in Python, right? It does not always have to be a user defined function, right? It can be a function which exists in Python, right? So map takes one argument, which is a function, be it a lambda function or user defined function or an existing function, takes second argument as a list, applies that function to every element of that list and returns the resultant as a list. Filter, on the other hand, takes a function, but this function should be in such a function which outputs only a boolean. Remember, it should always output a boolean. And what filter will do is it will only preserve cases where the boolean was true. It will not preserve cases where the boolean was false. It will only keep elements from the list where the resultant return from the boolean function was true. It will be a filter type. No, here you want to write type here, right? This will return a filter. I think I missed a bracket, right? Where?
One is name is another one, the second is enumerate. Now, if I wanted to use the lambda, and I will pass two arguments. Name and enumerate. It will come to separate list.
Lambda function. No, I didn't get you. So you have two. Okay, let me create here, right? So age is say 2, and within that you have say 31, 20, 25. Yes. So now what do you want me to do? No, filter can take only one list at a time. It will not take more than one list. Yes, it can take only one list at a time. X? No, then you'll have to use map. Understand the objective of filter. Filter is to get a subset, right? Subset should be based on a criteria. Now that criteria can only be true or false. So because you see, so one bracket is for filter, then the other bracket, okay, it's my mistake, it should be one bracket. You don't need this bracket. This should be. Yes. Is filter and map clear? Okay. So if this is clear, let's do a small exercise. What you need to do is take a function. You need to write a function which takes a list as input, and then it multiplies every element of the list by 2 and selects all the numbers that are divisible by 3. So what we will need to do is take a list as input, multiply every element by 2, only keep elements that are divisible by 3. And let's do this also, right? Let's do a bit of error handling. Check if the input is a list. Yeah. Done. Okay. People who are online, any questions on what you need to do?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there anybody who is not able to follow? Please let me know. I will repeat everything, but please make sure that you understand these things. Yes. 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 Use whatever. Whatever. Sorry? What is chaining? Yeah.
It's like we need to make a function, and after then we need to pass an argument. That's it, right? Like,
Yes, you need to build a function which takes list as input. Yes.
fine.
Okay. Has everybody finished working on this? If yes, so let's try, right? So first we define a function. Say if you will see, it takes a list as input. Now we need to check whether this is a list. So we write if or type, I mean whatever, right?
Yeah. If instance list.
Then what should I write here? So then basically I will write directly this return. I will write list filter. Then let me write, right? So list filter, and then within filter I need to check for divisibility by 3, right? So I write lambda x colon x3 is equal to 0, right? Comma, then I write map. Now within, let's try that. Try this, right? So map within that lambda x what do I need to do? Into 2, comma, this is it, right? Okay. Can do that as well. Sorry, कर सकते हो, देखते हैं ना, let's try out ना. This is fine. It's fine, no? So one question which you should have is, I have not converted map to a list. Now thing is, Python is very intelligent. So what it will do is, if I want, so a map is nothing but it's a map object, but within it contains a list, right? So if Python understands that I am using this as a list, it will by default convert it to a list. Yeah, even if you write list, that is fine. That will work.
So can you repeat the
No, I
map
mean,
topic?
you could have also used x into 2. That is also fine. You could not have used, but this is also another way, right? Yes, sorry. What was the question from online?
So could you please repeat the map?
Repeat map, right? So what map does is, map takes one function. Let's understand this, right? Maps takes this lambda function. What is this lambda function doing? Lambda function is taking a number and multiplying it by 2. Map takes this function and applies it to each and every element of this INP list, right? INP has this list which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Map, what it will do is, it will take one element at a time and multiply that by 2. So what happens is 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 3 becomes 6, 4 becomes 8. Was it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any question? Any question on this? Because out of 2, 4, 6 and 8, which is divisible by 3? 6. That's why 6.
So what is the use of map in this?
The use of map is, I'm basically using map to multiply each and every element of this INP list by 2. INP is a list, right? I want to multiply each and every element of this list by 2.
Okay.
Instead of using map, what you could have also done is, which is also fine, you could have directly written x into 2. What this also does is, this will also multiply every element by 2. This won't? Oh, it repeats. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying what? I could have done what? What will that do? Mhm. So what do you get? So what is the resultant? I need 6 as the output, right? Will you get 6? I'll use filter. I'll use filter or map. I'll use filter. Okay. And then what will that do? That will not change the list, na? That will not change the list. The thing is, you will get 3 as the output, because you're not changing the list, na? Filter is only checking whether the condition is true or false. Hmm.
Because whatever we will input, it will come under the map. Can we do that?
Yeah, I mean, you can convert this to a list. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, within this,
And
you
then
can.
You can only do that.
No, you cannot write list here. But after you have taken the input, you can convert that to a list. Okay. But however, this is clear, right? The map and filter functions are clear, right? Any questions on map and filter? No, convert that to a list. Because see, what other sequential data structures have you learned? Tuple, right? Is tuple mutable? So you cannot apply, right? You cannot map a function to it.
We can apply.
String is a list, right? Yeah. No. Okay, now the next two functions that we are going to learn are zip and enumerate. These are utility functions. What do I mean by utility functions? These will be used as part of a larger program. So you just need to understand what they do. Now what a zip does is, it takes two lists as input and then creates a dictionary out of it. Sorry, it takes two lists as input and creates tuple out of it. Sorry. So for example, let's say I have given this string. It is a list. Now range is also a list, right? Okay. So then if I write zip sequence 1 and sequence 2, what this will do is, this will give me a list of tuples. Now the way this list is organized is, it takes the first element and pairs it with the first element, takes the second element, pairs it with the second element, and so on. And this list will continue till the pair exists. Say for example, in the first case, how many elements are here? 5. In the second case, 10, right? But you will see that in the resultant list of tuples, there are only 5 tuples. So zip will continue till the point that you can find pairs. So the length of that list will be minimum of the length of all the lists that you input. Right? So this is one utility function called zip. Now, the second utility function is enumerate. What enumerate does is, so enumerate takes a list as input. Say I give range 10.
Only two list will gonna pass in zip.
No, you can pass as many lists as you want in the zip function.
Okay.
So what this enumerate does is, it creates again a list of tuples, right? Now what will be there in that tuple? The first element of that tuple will be the position of that element in that list. So what, for example, what I mean is, say instead of range, if I pass so if I pass this, right, what you will get is a list of tuples. The list of tuples are in such a way that the first element of the tuple is the position of the element in the list. Second is the actual value of the list element, right? So it's 0, A, 1, N, 2, A, etc., etc. Right? Zip takes two lists or more than two lists and zip them together into list of tuples. Enumerate takes a list and create a list of tuples such that the first element of that tuple will be the position of that element in the list. Second one will be the actual value of that element. Position value, and so on.
Single list will be passed.
Yeah, you can get separate out the tuples. Yeah. Sorry, what was the question online?
So single list will gonna pass in enumerate.
Yes, in the enumerate you can pass only one list at a time, because it gives you the position of that elements, right? So it takes one list at a time.
So can we do the slicing with enumerate?
Exactly. I was coming to that. Yes. What you were saying? In zip, the length will be minimum of all the lists. Now,
Do we have some practical?
write a code where you use enumerate to reverse a string.
Yeah, do we have any
Or let's
practical
keep it
use
simple, right?
for this?
So write a code, one second, write a code where you print even position values of a list. You will take a list as input and print 0th position, since first, second position, then 4th position, and so on. Yes, sorry. What was the question from online?
The question was, do we have any practical use of this enumerate? Means any example?
Yes, I just gave you, right? Say, for example, use enumerate to print even positioned values of a list.
Hello,
Yes.
guys. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, I thought it was audio issue. YouTube.
No, I have given an exercise, right? Use enumerate to write a code that takes a list as input and prints the even positioned elements. Done? Okay. So let's write this, right? Let's write a list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's start with 0. Okay. Let's say this is a list. Now what I do is I write for I in X. Now what I will take, sorry, for I, sorry, one second. I in enumerate X. Now what I will take one tuple at a time, because it is a list of tuples. Enumerate X is a list of tuples, right? I'll take one tuple at a time. Then what I do is I unpack the tuple. What is there in the tuple? First is the position. So I write POS, comma, VAL is equal to I. What will happen? POS will have the position, VAL will have the value. Then I check if POS divided by 2 gives you a 0 as a remainder, then you will
Print val.
print val. Right? All of you agree with this? If you run this, this will print out all the even positioned numbers. In fact, I could have skipped a step. What I could have directly said is, I could have skipped this step and I could have unpacked the tuple here. I could have said POS comma val in enumerate X. Well, what this will do is, this will be same as keep doing the unpacking later on, right? I'm unpacking it at the top in the loop itself. If you run this also, it basically gives you the same exact output. Clear?
So can we use the filter and the lambda function in this? If in the list we have the
Yes,
string.
you can actually, you can, but I wanted you guys to use enumerate.
Sir, with enumerate, if we want to use the filter with lambda function, with the list we have a string.
Oh yeah, you can, okay, yes, you can also use a lambda function as well, right? So actually good logic, right? So even if I don't have to use a for loop here. So what he's saying is we could have used a lambda function on this enumerate as well, right? So what we could have done is, so what I need to do is, this is enumerate, right? So it gives me a list of tuples. And then what I need to do is, I will need to filter and within filter, I need to write a lambda function which takes a tuple as input, checks whether the first position is divided by 2, gives you a 0 remainder, comma, enumerate X. This should work, right? It will return a, it will return a list of tuples. Yeah, it will return a list of tuples. Okay, but this is also another use case, okay?
Sir, if the list having a string.
Yeah, so it will, a list can have a string, right? So it will return the even positioned alphabets.
Yes.
So you want to say that whenever lambda is, whenever we are filtering out using lambda, so if it is going to the next position, it is taking it as the first position only, like in X 0.
Because enumerate returns you what? List of tuples such that the first element in that tuple is position. So I'm looking up the first element from that tuple. Right? X0 is the first element of the tuple, right? Exactly. So I am converting this into tuples, then I'm looking at the first element of the tuple. Okay. Position is changed as in? Yeah, now the positions are different, right? Now 0 is first, 2 is second, and so on. But enumerate was generated before. So enumerate was generated before, after that lambda was applied. Okay, now. Bring a position as in? You only need. Okay, so if you want to do that, so you have got this list. Now what all you need to do is, yes, you can use a map for this. So what you need to do is, within this list, write a map. Now what this map will do is, you applies a lambda function. Now what this lambda function does is, it takes a tuple, and what it does is, it will return the second element of the tuple. Right? and then you apply this. I need one more bracket. This gives you the elements. Okay. Okay, is everybody clear in this line? So basically this line summarizes whatever we have covered since yesterday, right? We have used map here, we have used filter here, we have used a function here, right? Is everybody comfortable with this line? Go through this, sure. Just let me know if you don't understand. That is very important. So what is happening here, right? So let's start at the innermost bracket, right? This is the innermost bracket. So I first write enumerate x. What is the resultant of enumerate x? List of tuples, right? Tuples are such that first element is the position, second element is the actual value of the element. Now there what I say is I am using a filter. Now what does a filter do? A filter goes to a list and it applies a function and see wherever that function is true, keeps that element, discards everything else, right? Now in that lambda function, what am I doing? I am looking at that list, taking one element of that list. Now what are the elements? The elements itself are tuple. The element of the list of enumerate is a tuple, right? Now that tuple has a property such that the first element of that tuple is position. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the position. X0 is the position, first position, right? So I'm looking at whether the first position value is divisible by 2 or not. Or in other words, I'm looking whether it is even positioned or not. If it is even positioned, I'm keeping it. Now, what is the resultant of this? The resultant of this is a list of tuples such that I get the position and the value of even positions. Then I only need the value. Only value, right? So I map a lambda function. Now what is the job of the lambda function? The job of the lambda function is very simple. It takes a tuple and returns the second element. Because second element is the value. That's what it is doing. It is returning it is taking all the tuples which are already even position values and just returning the values. Exactly, because in enumerate, the tuples that you are generating, first value is position, second value is the value. So x1 is the second value, right? So I mean it is getting confusing because I am using 1, 2, 3, 4. If I write something like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, right? Yes. It is a list, right? A filter returns a list. Now that list might have tuples inside it, but it is a list, yes. Is this clear now? So it takes a tuple, x is a tuple. X1 is what? Second element of that tuple. So it's returning the second element, which is actually A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, right?
Sir, there is one question. What is map doing here? I mean, I understood that lambda function is taking the second element of the tuple.
Map applying this lambda function to every element of the list.
Okay, got it.
So one question is there. When we are going to put a loop, previously you mentioned for I in enumerate, there it showed indent error. So how we can analyze this? How much tab will be there?
Okay, just count how many for loops have you used. That many tabs should be there. So for example, if I write for I in range 10, and then I write for j in range 5, then how many for loops? 2 for loops. So whatever I write here should have 2 tabs. So even if you come here, always ensure that you have 2 tabs.
Okay. And if we are going to put a tab in a first loop, it will show error.
If you put one tab here, it will be part of outer first loop.
No, just
it will be part of the I loop. If you put 2 tabs here, that will be part of the J loop.
Sorry, repeat again, sir, please.
If you put, so for example, let me write this, right? So now if I run this, what will happen is you get an output like this. Everything is printed 5 times. Why? Because this print I is part of the jth loop, right?
Okay.
If I reduce 1 tab, it becomes part of the ith loop, then everything will be printed once. Oh, I have to put something here.
Okay, so it's a part of I loop.
Yes, it is part of the I loop.
And not the part of J loop?
Not part of J loop, because I have given 1 tab, right? So it becomes part of the I loop.
Okay. Okay, 1 tab means like all things are under first loop.
Yes.
And 2 tabs like under second loop.
Yes, it's like brackets. You have used brackets in mathematics, right?
Yeah.
If you use 1 bracket, it is part of the outermost function. If you use 2 brackets, it is part of the inner function.
If we are going to remove second loop and we are going to put 1 tab in a first loop,
That's
then
fine.
again
This will run.
no, it is showing error.
No, why will it show here error? If I run this, it will run.
No, we are going to put 1 tab in the first loop.
Yeah, I have put 1 tab.
No, in the first loop before 4.
No, that you can't do, right? If you do this, then if whatever is part of the first loop will also have to have a tab. And this will still give you error because this indentation is not expected.
Okay.
Why will
That's
you
what
put a tab here?
That's what I do. Okay. Okay.
Don't do that. So only use tab if it is required, right? Because
Correct.
tab is syntactical. It has syntactical importance. In certain language, tabs are optional. They are more like a better way of representing a code. But in Python, tab is part of the syntax. So you'll have to be careful in using tab.
Okay. Fine, sir.
Okay, all of you are clear
Sir,
on this, right?
sir, the
Yes.
question is when you used filter lambda, you started with x0, and
Yes.
when you used map, you started with x1. So I didn't understand the logic. X0 and x1.
So what is x0? X0 is the position, right?
Position, yeah.
So when I say x0 divided by 2 should give 0 reminder, I am keeping the even positions.
Yeah.
And what is x1? X1 is the actual value, right?
Okay, x1 is value.
So what if
Value
you
of the string. Value of
write value of enumerate, right? So if when you do enumerate x,
the.
if you do enumerate x, what do you get? You basically get a list of tuples, right? Such that the first element is the position, second element is the value. So what I'm first doing is I'm finding out which are evenly positioned. That is part of this filter. It will give me all the even positioned values, right? Then I am taking from that tuple, I am taking the values, which is in the second position.
Okay, x1 is the second position, I mean second position of the tuple, and x0 is the first position of the tuple. And in x0 we are dividing it by 0. In x1 we are just mapping the x1 value.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay. So all of you understand couple of things, right? A, how to define a function. B, how to define a lambda function. How to use map. How to use filter. Any questions on these 4 things?
So what is the main function using of map?
The use of map is to apply a function to each and every element of a list. So if you have a list of numbers and you want to change those numbers in a certain way, you use map.
We can use the filter on the place of map. Using here map.
Filter will only give you a subset of that list. It will not change the value.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. In iteration 228. Okay. No, it is not giving you position. So sequence 1 is A, B, C, D, E. Print sequence 1. To convert a string to a list, you can directly convert that string to a list. You don't need to use dot split. No, what happens is when I can directly convert a string to a list, it will split alphabet wise. So A, B, C, D, E, A becomes the first element, B becomes the second element, C third, D fourth, and so on. That's how the list function works. Split also works exactly the same way, but in split you can choose how to split. You can choose whether you want to split at space or anything else. No, I have to give something in list, right? I have to give something here. I have deleted, right? So here if I give say Q, W, E, whatever, right? Then this will work. If you have a full sentence, convert it to a list, the list will have individual alphabets as elements. If you want to split it into words, you have to use a function called split. Okay. Any questions? Split, I told you guys to explore the methods. See, you'll have to give some effort, right?
So split is the function which is using to distribute the alphabets by comma.
What split is what?
Split
I have not used split here.
Okay.
I have not used split. Yes. So there are a couple of functions in string: replace, split. Make sure you go through them, right? Because we will use them. Replace, split, strip. Go through them, right? Max min is still okay, but find, yeah. So make sure even if you don't go through methods of integer or float, at least go through the methods of the string, because string handling is a bit difficult, right? So you need to know the exact methods. Okay, now we all know what is list comprehension, right? What is list comprehension? What is list comprehension? Yeah, so remember yesterday we discussed that you can create a list using a for loop. That's list comprehension, creating a loop in a ternary format. So what did you do? You used a square bracket and then you wrote X for X in a list, right? This will create a list. This is known as list comprehension. Similarly, there is dictionary comprehension. Now, for a dictionary, what do you need? Key and a value. Now, where can you get keys and values? Which function gives you keys and values? Enumerate. Enumerate gives you key value pair, right? It gives you list of tuples. Yes or no? So, if you want to create a dictionary in a single ternary loop, what you can do is you can write, say, X is to Y. X is to Y is key is to value. in enumerate A, B, C, D, E, F. Now tell me, what will this list dictionary have? So it will have, in a dictionary, it will have what?
List ABCD. Not here, sir. Before the
Just a
string, before the string, you have to write the list.
Before this, no, that's fine. That's fine. No, dictionary key is to value, right? Key is to value. Let me see. This should work. Oh, huh. Let's say I need to create a dictionary. What I can do is case 3 for k comma v in enumerate A, B, C, D, E. I did not unpack it, right? I was just assigning it directly. You need to unpack. So I was directly writing KV4, right? So there was no unpacking that was happening. You need to unpack this first. So if you write something like this will give you a dictionary as a output. Now what else can I use? Instead of enumerate, I can use zip. Zip also can give you list of tuples. So what I can do is, instead of enumerate, replace this with zip. Now if I replace this with zip, I need to give another list, E, F, G, H, right? If I run this will be the output. So dictionaries can be created using this form of ternary expression by either using enumerate or zip. Basically, you need list of tuples, right? If you have a list of tuples, you can create dictionary out of it.
So why are we creating dictionaries? I mean, what is the practical use of creating dictionaries?
You will see the practical use. You will see the practical use in the analysis. For now, just remember. For now, just remember that if I need to create a list using for loop, this is how I can create. If I need to create a dictionary using a loop, this is how I can create. Okay. Right? To remember these things, because while doing analysis, you will see the requirement that I need to create a dictionary, I need to create a list. Right? Remember this expression.
We are going to put the K is to V like to have this output, A is to E, B is to F.
Sorry,
K ratio V.
Not K ratio V. K is to V is how you create dictionary, right? Key is to value. So I am saying,
okay,
take one. So zip will give you a list of tuples, right? So I'm saying unpack that tuple into K and V and use that to create dictionary.
Okay.
Okay. Any question?
Okay.
Cool. So now let's take a break. After the break, what we are going to do is we will then look at how you can define your own modules and how you can define your own class. One second. Now, so we have understood the basic construct of Python code, right? Just to do a small recap. We couple of things to remember, right? So first is data types. Data types are of primarily two types: numeric, string. Numeric can be again of two types: integer, float. Okay. Now, once you know the data types, again, I'm giving you the basic skeletal framework that you should remember, right? Everything else, if you remember over and above this, that's fine. So you have data types. After that, we went into data structures. So data structures in what you need to remember is primarily list. Now list is list you need to remember the creation. The name is equal to in square bracket value 1 comma value 2 dot dot dot, right? This is how you define a list. Now once you have defined a list, the next thing that you should remember is indexing. Indexing is basically name of the list within that position, right? This is indexing. The third thing that you should remember is list is mutable. Only three things to remember in list. Similarly, the next thing that you should remember is tuple. Within tuple, again, three things to remember: creation. Creation is very simple: name equal to first bracket, then value 1 comma value 2 dot dot dot. Then again indexing is exactly same as that of a list: name within square bracket, position. Then you have mutable property. Tuple is immutable. Okay. Then you have dictionary. Which is still okay, right? Remember this, you should be sorted. Okay. I'm not giving you the exhaustive list. This is the bare minimum that you should remember. Dictionary, you should remember creation. Name followed by curly bracket, name is equal to curly bracket followed by key 1, value 1 comma dot dot dot, right? This is how you should define a tuple. Then, sorry, define a dictionary. Then indexing is name followed by key. Dictionary is mutable, right? Then the last data structure is set. There is very less thing to remember here. Only thing to remember here is set bracket list gives unique elements. That's it, right? This is the only thing that you should remember. Then after data structures, what you should remember is for loop. The format of for loop is for, then I or j or whatever in list, right? This is the format of a for loop. Then what you should remember is while loop. The while loop is while loop while condition and then whatever you want to do in that loop, right? The fifth thing that you should remember is if condition. Now if condition is basically of three types: if, a particular condition, then whatever you want to do, then you have elif, as many elif as you need, condition. After that you have else. Okay, now after, if you remember for if, then what you need to remember is defining a function. A function is defined very simply. It is def name within bracket inputs. Forget about default values, forget about everything else. Remember this. Okay. Now, once you have, there are two kinds of function. This is the way you define a normal function. The second way of defining a function is lambda function. The format is lambda, then input, then colon, then function. This is how you define a lambda function. Now, once you have defined this function, you need to usually apply it to a list, right? You can apply functions to a list either by using map. Map works in map, then you have the function, then you have list. Similarly, filter, then function, then list. There is a caveat here. The caveat here is, here when you are applying function, the function should return a boolean. Make sure that a function returns a boolean only. And that's about it. So if you remember this much, you are covered on basic Python, at least for this course. Okay, just remember this much, right? Any questions on anything of this from this? No questions? Okay, now the next things that we are going to talk about, what you need to understand is we will never use them in this course, right? But why are we talking about? We are talking about these things because when you apply these, when you are working on advanced machine learning, these will come handy. These are not very important for this particular course, but in the long run, they'll come into play, right? So for this particular course, whatever we have covered so far is sufficient enough, right? The next thing that we are going to talk about will come into play when you are actually using machine learning in your job or in actual practice, right? Now, what are we going to learn here? We are going to learn three things primarily. We are going to learn how you can define a class. We will learn how you can define a module. We will learn how to do error or exception handling. These are the three things that we are going to learn, which are not very, very important for this course, but they are important in the long run. Okay, now let's start with the first one. How do you define a class? Now, to understand the definition of a class, you have to understand what is a class. A class is nothing but a set of functions and data structures, right? Say, for example, a list is a class. A string is a class, right? Why? A string is a data structure. It also has methods which can be applied on that data structure. So it becomes a class. What if you want to develop your own class? Example is, let's say I want to develop a class which can store different demographic attributes of a person, right? Can happen. So what I can do is, the definition of a class starts with this word class, right? Then name of the class. Let's say name of the class is demo. Then within that class, you have the option to document what that class does, right? The documentation is exactly same as what you did in a function. You start with three inverted commas. Now here what I'm trying to do is I'm basically trying to record demographic details. Okay. Now, after the documentation, which is a good practice to do, but is optional, what you usually will have to do is you have to define the data structure, right? Now, definition of the data structure is usually done within a function known as init. This init function or this type of functions are known as constructor functions, right? So what do we mean by constructor functions? All the functions that begin with double underscore and then rename and followed by double underscore, they are known as constructor functions. The property of the constructor function is very simple. Constructor functions are those functions which are run as soon as you refer to that class, right? So they are run as soon as I call this class demographic. This function will be run. That's the only difference of a constructor function from any other function. Any other function is only run when you actually call that function. But a constructor function is run as soon as you call that class. So let us understand why is that important, right? Now in the init function, this constructor function is basically used to specify the data structure, right? Now, let me write the data structure first and then I will explain, right? Let's say in the demographic details, I'm interested in three things. One is name, then I have age, and then I have, say, height, right? So let's say these are the three elements that I'm only recording in this data structure. So I write this constructor function in this way. Then I write self dot age is equal to age, self dot name is equal to name, then I write self dot height is equal to height. Now what am I doing here? If you look at this constructor function, it first starts with a word called self. Now instead of self, you can write your own name, doesn't matter. It starts with a name of the variable, right? Now what this first argument does is it refers to the object itself, right? What essentially this function does is, like I said, this constructor function is run as soon as you call this object, right? So let's run this, right? So if I run this, I have defined this class, right? Now let's say I want to actually create an object of this class. So what do? I write X is equal to demo. When I write demo, it refers to that object, right? Or that class. So when a demo and within bracket, what is the first argument? Ignore self. The first argument is name. So I give name here. The second argument is age. So I give a age here. The third argument is height. So I give a height here. So as soon as I run this, right, what happens is, I told you this init function will be called as soon as I refer to this object. As soon as I run this, the first function that is called is init, right? Now this init function, first argument is the object itself. So first I ignore first argument, right? Second argument onwards, it takes the inputs from the user. right? So the first input is name, second input is age, third input is height. Then what I'm doing is I am assigning these inputted values to the attributes, right? I'm saying that this X value, this X variable that you have created, it has basically 3 attributes in it: age, name, and height. I'm assigning whatever you have inputted from the user as age, assign that to the age attribute. Whatever you have inputted from the user as name, assign it to the name attribute. Whatever you have inputted as height, assign it to the height attribute, right? So what has happened is, now if I call a dir on X, apart from the constructor functions, what you will see is, you see there are 3 components which has been created: age, height, and weight. I have created 3 components of that X variable, right? It's like, say for example, it's like, again, going back to the box example, right? Each object is a box. Now I have created a box called demo, right? And within that box, what I have done is I have made 3 shelves. The first shelf is assigned to capture name. Second shelf is assigned to capture age. Third shelf is assigned to capture height. I have created this empty box with 3 shelves. Now what I'm doing is, when I run this line, what is happening is I'm telling Python, okay, fetch that box, right? Fetch that box. And now when you are fetching that box, what should you input in those shelves? Within the first shelf, input Abranev. Within that second shelf, input 30. Within the third shelf, input 5.7, right? So you are inputting or assigning values to each and every shelf, right? That's what this init function is doing. Self refers to the fact that it is calling the object itself. So self is a default argument that you have to give. This refers to the object itself, right? And then it basically tells that, so when I write init underscore self, it basically tells that init function for this object, right? And then within that object, you have 3 attributes. Self means it refers to itself, its own self. No, you can give anything else as well. I mean, you can write ABCD here, but if you write ABCD here also you have to write ABCD. No, init is fixed. You will have to use init as the constructor function. Yes, double underscore init double underscore is fixed.
Init is the constructor.
The name of the constructor is fixed, but self is not fixed. You can use any other. See, I am using the name self because this name actually refers to self. That's why we are using this name self. A class is an object, right, which has data structures as well as methods with it. Think of it, right? So an integer is a class, right? It has a data structure, it can store numbers, and it has methods. Methods is the list that you get if you press dot and tab. Those are all the methods, right? Similarly, I have created a class called demo, which has 3 attributes. Now, integer has only 1 attribute, but think of a complex number. All of you understand complex number, right? Complex number has 2 attributes. One is the real part, second is the imaginary part, right? Think of another case. Think of a point in 2-dimensional space. All of you have done coordinate geometry, right? Every point in 2-dimensional space has how many attributes? 2 attributes, X attribute, Y attribute. So if I create an object in which identifies a point in the 2-dimensional space, I'll have to have 2 attributes for it. I can create a class which can store 2 numbers. So a class is basically a data structure, and you can have functions which are very specific to that data structure. Let us do another example, right? All of you understand coordinate geometry. In a two-dimensional plane, every point has to be specified by 2 points. Yes or no? Okay. Now, what we will do is we will basically define a class to store that, right? So I have defined a class called point. Point means point in two-dimensional plane, right? Now, I am calling the constructor function here. The constructor function is constructing the object, right? Now, when you construct the object, what are the two things that you need, X and Y? So I am creating two attributes of this self object, X and Y, and I am taking those as user input. As not functions, these are attributes. So if I run this, right? If I run this and I call this point and assign 10, 20. If you check you understand, right? I'm calling this class. Point is the name of the class. I'm calling this class and assigning 10, 20 as X and Y coordinates, right? Then if I check the type, you will see this is a new type of data. This type is point type. This is a type that I have created, right? This is neither integer nor float nor list nor dictionary. This is a new type. Now, what is the feature of this type? The feature of this type is this type, for each of object of this type, I have two attributes. What are those attributes? So if I write point here, I can get those attributes. If I write say point dot x, this will give me the x coordinate. Oh, sorry, p1 dot x. Sorry. Good catch. P1 dot x. Sorry. P1 dot x will give me the x coordinate, right? Similarly, if I write P1 dot y, this will give me the y coordinate.
20.
Right? All of you are clear on the init function? Init function is where you define the data structure of the object. Init is a constructor. I'm coming to that. You have understood init constructor, right? Okay. Now,
so where we are creating the object?
Init is basically that function. Forget constructor. Think of this as any function which is called as soon as you refer to that object, right? So this is a function which you will use to define the data structure. So here, if I write init self.x equal to x, it means whatever the user has inputted, take the first number as x coordinate, takes the second number as the y coordinate. Yes.
So where we are creating the object?
What is?
Where we are creating the object here.
Okay. The data structure is this self. This is the data structure, right? Function is this init, right? Function is this init function is a function which you use to create that data structure. Somewhere you have to code how that data structure looks like, right? This is a function which creates the data structure. Okay. Now, once you have created the init function, the init, apart from the init, there are other constructors as well, right? For example, there is a constructor function called _str_. This function is used to specify what will be printed if you call print that object. If I write print p1, p1 is a point object. What will the print look like? That is mentioned in the _str_. So for example, I have defined p1 as 10, 20, right? If I write print p1, what should come? It should come as point at 10, 20. All of you understand this expression, right? If you don't understand this expression, let me simplify. I can use dot format here as well. We have covered dot format, right? So let it be, say, A. Forget percentage if, right? Let's keep it simple. So you know dot format, right? All of you are familiar with this expression? Dot format is fine, right? Okay. So what if I run this? What should be the print? What should the print look like? Point at 10, 20? Point at 10, 20, right? So let me run this. So double underscore str double underscore is another constructor function which tells Python what should be printed if I print a particular object of that class. Yes, double underscore int double underscore is used to mention the data structure. Double underscore str double underscore is used to mention the print format. Right? In this way, there are other constructor functions as well. If you're interested, search on Google, you will get a list of all possible constructor functions. Right? The most important one is double underscore init double underscore because that has to be present if you want to have a data structure. Because that's where you define the structure. Okay, now.
So every constructor is going to start from double underscore?
Yes, every constructor function is going to start with a double underscore. Now, somebody had asked me last week that if I define a float, say if I write x is equal to say 1.2 and I call dir x, you not only get all the methods, but you get a lot of now functions with double underscore, right? So I had told you that we'll discuss it when we define our own class. So you see all of these are different constructor functions which are available. Each of them have their own properties. Right? Double underscore are all constructor functions and everything else are methods. Whatever you see without double underscore are methods. No, you just need to know double underscore init double underscore. str if you want to print. You can define your own constructor function as well. Yes, yes, yes.
So in Python 2, it's not going to reflect when you are going to put in Python 3 is x dot. There is something we are going to have number of things like a drop down.
What?
So when we are going to put x dot, it's showing the properties of particular.
X dot only shows the methods. It will not show the constructor functions.
Right.
Dot
but
only
in
shows the methods.
Python 2, I'm not able to see all these drop downs.
That's not possible. Write dot, press tab, you will see. That has nothing to do with Python 2. It is a property of Jupyter Notebook.
Okay, x dot, we have to press tab.
Yes.
Okay. I will check.
Okay. Now, then a class, apart from the data structure itself, will have or might have functions which are particular to that class of objects, right? For example, in a coordinate geometry, there is a concept of distance between two points, right? Which is the Euclidean distance, right? What is Euclidean distance? If there is a point 1, 2 and there is a point 2, 3, distance between them are 1 minus 2 to the power 2 plus 2 minus 3 to the power 2, right? Okay. So let's define a method called distance. We are dealing with coordinate geometry here, right? So let's define a concept called distance, or a method called distance. Now, in order to find distance of one point from another point, what do we need to get as input? The coordinates of the second point. That is the input, right? So you see, I have taken two values as inputs from the user. Self is mandatory, right? Self refers to the self object itself. X1 and X1 and Y1 are taken as input. Now, what is Euclidean distance? Euclidean distance is square root of self x. Self x is the x coordinate of the point minus the inputted x coordinate to the power 2 plus self y minus y1 to the power 2. This is the Euclidean distance formula. If you don't understand Euclidean distance, fine, think of it as some mathematical calculation, right? So the point is, this distance function is only available for the point object. It is not available outside the point object. So if I have defined P1 as a point object and I write P1 dot D and press a tab, I will get autofill as distance, right? And in the bracket, if I write 20, 30, I will get distance of the point 10, 20 from 20, 30, right? If I press enter, I'll get a number as output. Is this clear? Okay. If this is clear, let's do a small exercise.
Sir,
Right. Yes.
For calculating the distance formula, we had written the return m dot sqrt self dot x. Why we don't write the self dot x1?
Because x1 is the second point, right? Self dot x is the first point. You need to find distance of the first point from the second point.
But sir, we are initializing for the x and the x1 both for the self dot x and the self dot x1.
No. X1 and Y1 are the coordinates of the second point that you take from the user as input.
Yes.
X and Y are the coordinates of the first point, which is P1.
But above we had initialized self x dot y, x comma y.
What do you mean by above? So in the init constructor, right?
Yes.
In the init constructor, you have already, so look at this line, right? When I write point 10, 20, the init constructor has already run, right?
Yes.
Now P1 has two values, 10 and 20.
Yes.
When I write P1 dot distance, it takes 20 and 30, which are the coordinates of the second point.
Yes.
And gives you distance of P1 from 20, 30.
Yes, sir. X2 minus x1 and y2 minus y1 formula I had.
Yeah. So what is the question?
So why we don't write the self dot x minus self dot x1 here?
Because self refers to the x1 and y1 are not point objects, right?
Yes.
X1 and y1 are just integers that you have inputted.
Okay.
Self refers to a point object.
The values which are initialized by the constructor, we have to use the self.
Self dot x refer to the point object.
Yes.
X1 and Y1 are not point objects. These are numbers which you take as input from the user.
Okay.
So 20 and 30 are X1 and Y1.
Yes.
Okay.
And self dot x is 10, self dot y is 20. Because these are already a point, part of a point object.
Got it.
Sorry.
And one more thing, in the above code, somewhere have we defined point as object or something, like after
Code, right?
yeah,
Define self x and self y.
yeah,
And when we have created a point called 10 comma 20 here.
So we can write something else instead of point also here.
No, point is the name of the class, right?
So where have we defined the class name? Can you please show me on the screen?
Here.
Okay, yeah, this I haven't seen. Yeah, got it.
In the function, always referred, because every method refers to the self object, right? Error. Distance is not a class, but how? Which one is having the same? So think of this as, when I say point 10 comma 20, it is calling the init constructor, right? Init constructor, and it assigns 10 comma 20 as x and y coordinates, and it stores it in the memory and names that region of the memory as p1. Yes, because that's the constructor function, right? Now, distance is not a constructor function. This is a method which will only be called when we actually call for it, right? When I write p1 dot distance, p1 becomes the self. Only on point objects. These are only part of the point object. For example, trim. Trim is part of string function, string objects. It will not work on integers. Similarly, distance will only work on point object. Okay, so when I write p1 dot distance, p1 becomes self, and then distance takes 2 more arguments. So when you say self dot x, it is basically x coordinate of p1. Of course, you are writing p1 dot distance, right? P1 is already member of that class. M is numpy. Name of the numpy module. Square root is a function of numpy, or math, whatever, right? It's a module. Is it? Not necessary. I mean, if you want to define a class which only has functions, then but I don't see any use of that. Usually you would want to define a class to store data as well. I mean, if you don't have init function, you cannot store data. If you cannot store data, what is the use of writing functions on it? Yes.
Sir, one question is here: why we use m dot sqrt? Like
m is name of the math module which has the square root function.
Okay. Fine, sir.
Okay, now let's do a small exercise. What you are going to do now is create an object or create a class which can store features of a car. Now, what are the features? Create a class to store car features. Now, what are the features? One is model. Then you have horsepower. Then you have length. And you have width. and you also have weight, right? तो वैसे तो बना सकते हैं अभी. The color नहीं यार. Wait. Okay. The reason I took this is, and after I've defined this class, right? I need two methods for this class. What one method will do is, one method will give me, so methods within that class should be, one method will give me weight is to horsepower ratio. Weight is to HP ratio. Okay. The second method will basically give me the dimension, which is length into width. Okay, so two methods. One is gives you horsepower is to ratio. Oh, sorry, weight is to horsepower ratio. Second method gives you length into width. Yeah, it will be, one will output the ratio, second will output the product. Scroll up. You want to know how to define a class, right? Yeah, syntax, right? So start with the word class, the name of the class, and then a colon, and after that write whatever are the definitions. People who are online, are you guys clear what has to be done?
Yes.
You don't see my code, right? I mean, I might not be right. I was just, I'm also figuring it out. Done? Okay. So something like this. Okay, let's try out whether this works. Um, let's say x is equal to cars. Cars is the name of the class. Then within that, I have to give the model, right? Model, let's say SLA. Then say horsepower is 200. Length is say 100, 1000. Width is say 600. Weight is say 200. I give everything, right? Length, model, horsepower, length, width, height. Model, horsepower, length, width, height, right? Okay. So if I run this, I have a variable called x, which belongs to the class cars. How do I verify that? I look at the type. Cars, right? Okay. Now, I need to calculate two things. One is horsepower is to weight ratio. Second is the dimension, right? So what I call is x dot ratio. So should I give a bracket or should I not give a bracket? Let's run without a bracket. Okay, so you need to give a bracket, right? Now, did it do it correctly? It is rounding off. Oh, 200 divided by 200, so it's fine. Okay. Now, then you have dimension. And it will give you length into width, right? Indentation matters, right? Everything within a class should have indentation. Everything within the constructor functions and other methods should have indentation. Indentation matters in Python, period. It matters everywhere. Other languages have brackets, right? Yeah, Python does not have bracket. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. What? You are defining init after in the ratio? In the ratio, you want to write all of these 5 lines within ratio method. All the 5 values as input.
right?
Just self, yes.
Yeah, if we are giving the parameters after the self.
But why would you need to give? Because you already have those parameters in your data, so you can directly take that from the data structure.
Okay, and if we are giving it and then we are putting the values in the brackets, then we are calling x for dimension. Then if
Yeah, I mean, if you want to give, say, HP here and whatever, right? HP and then what? Weight. Then don't write self, na? Just do weight by HP.
Yeah.
That will also work. That will also, but that's redundant, right? Why would you want user to give it when he has already given it once? The user has already given it once, right? Why would you want to take it again?
Sir,
Yeah, it will.
here,
The code will work. The code will work. If you want, if your definition of correctness is code will work or not, yes, the code will work. But is it the right thing to do? No, because the user has already given the input, right? You should you should take that from the data structure.
so here self is doing the same work what this do in Java.
Sir, I don't know Java, so I will not be able to tell what happens in Java. I can tell you self basically refers to the object.
So where is the object creation?
Object creation is underscore init underscore.
So this is the constructor.
This is a constructor, right? So when I write x is equal to cars and then all of these values, it is creating that object x.
Okay.
So when I write x dot diamond, self is basically referring to the x.
Okay, so X is the object.
Self is obviously object, right? Self is an object of the cars class.
And what is X?
X is just the name of the object. Say for example, you wear shoe, right? Now your shoe is a shoe, but your shoe can have name like Adidas, it can have name like Nike and so on. You are just assigning name of that object.
So if we say where is the object creation, so X is equal to cars is object creation.
Yeah, X equal to cars is object creation.
Okay.
Sir, in the cell def dimension, only we written the self. Why, sir?
Because we don't need to input anything. Now the user has already given the horsepower, weight, everything. So why do we need any other input?
So here self is the object for the ratio and the dimension function.
Self is basically this X. Just look at the code that I've written, right? I am writing X dot dimension. Self here refers to the X object, which already have everything, every other information.
So self is the object for the car, and we are using X to implement the self.
Cars is the name of the class.
Yes.
X is one member of the class. When I write X dot dimension, it is referring to the X named cars object and getting the length and getting its width and calculating the dimension.
So but defining the def ratio, we are using the self. Self is the object for the class car, and the X is the other object which is calling through the self.
No,
values
X
of the
is a
class.
cars object, right? Just look at the code. I have created the cars object. X is a cars object.
Yes.
So I am calling a property of X, which is ratio.
Not clear, sir.
That will work, but why would you want to do that? What is the confusion here? X is an object. I have already defined that X is of a cars class. Then when I write just self, so look at the function. Look at how I am calling this function. Whenever I call a method which is written within a class, I am giving an object of that class and calling the function. So self then becomes that object. I cannot just write dimension. I cannot just write dimension. If I write dimension only, it will give me an error because there is no self then. So if I just write dimension here, this will throw an error because self parameter itself is not present there. If I write x dot dimension, then only self parameter is there.
If we use a self dot dimension, sir.
Sir,
Self dot dimension.
you want to use self dot dimension, but there is no variable called self, right? Okay, let's say ABCD, right? Then ABCD. Whatever what you define, so self, I mean, give any name. I mean, you can write, if you define this object as self, then use self. Self is just a placeholder, right?
Sir, I'm not asking for the calling of the function. I was asking declaration of the function. Why we use the self over there and the def ratio self and the def dimension self?
Here, so you're talking about here with the definition of the class, right?
Sir, the declaration of the function def ratio bracket start
So
with self.
which line are you referring to? 261, 268, 269?
261, sir, 261 part number 8.
Part number
8.
Okay, yeah.
Why we use here the self?
Okay,
as
so
an argument.
If we do not use self, the Python will not know which data structure to refer to, right? So look at how I am calling ratio. When I write ratio, I write the name of the object dot ratio, right? So what this does is, this tells Python self is basically this ABCD. And then take the weight value of this ABCD and take the horsepower of this ABCD and return their ratio.
Okay.
You have to have a data to calculate the ratio, right? Self refers that use that object on which this method is called.
Okay.
This method is called on this ABCD object, right?
Yes.
Use that object as the input.
So here we are fetching the information for the car by object to object reference.
What do you mean by object to object?
Sir, here ABCD is the object for the car and the self is also is the object of the car.
No, self is just the placeholder. Self is only used. Self can take any value. Self can take ABCD, self can take EFGH, depending upon what name you give. Self will take that value. Self is just the placeholder.
Okay.
Write a couple of classes on your own, right? And then it will become clear. Write a couple of classes. No, it will work. Even if you write self here, it will work. Because this self is totally different from that self. So any name will work, right? Any name will work. Okay, so the person who was asking this, is this clear?
Sir, when I type self, I'm getting instance. I'm not getting main dot cars.
You are getting what?
Instance. It is the result is instance.
What did you write?
I mean exactly the same code, but instead of main dot cars, I'm getting instance.
No, then you have not written the same code. It cannot happen, na? Writing the same code, we are getting different results.
Oh yeah.
Just write this. Just think. I mean, don't copy the code. Think about what I have written, and try to replicate that. No, attributes are only available for objects of that class. Yeah, sure. I mean, you can access the attributes separately. You can write self.model. This will give you SLA. Yes, you will see all the constructor function along with the, you will see the attributes as well. You see all the attributes. You cannot differentiate between functions. Yeah, yeah. Okay, now let's do one more exercise, right? One last exercise. Define a class to do two things, right? Define a class to take details of a book. So the class will have two things. One is the data structure. The data structure will have author name. It will have whether number of pages and date, right? Let's not go into date now. Okay. What else, right?
Book name.
Name of the book, right? So it will have three things.
Title.
So it will have three things: author name, pages, name of the book. Now it will also have two methods, or one method basically. So what that method will do is it will take name of a author and tell you whether the name matches with the author of the book. Okay. And tell you whether takes the input, user input, and tells whether the author name matches with the author of the book. Author of the book. How can author name matches with the name of the book? Author name input matches with author of the book. Yes, the method will return yes or no. can use it.
Done, sir.
Okay. All of you completed that? Looks something like this? Okay. So again, try to figure out what we are doing. I am creating a book first, and then I am calling the book object. Okay. Then I'm giving the names, right? The author name is AD. Then let's say book name is Analytics, and let's say number of pages are 200, right? Then what I need to do is I'm calling book one dot match, and within that I'm passing AD. So what should be the output? Why will it be false? Right? Is there any question on what has happened here?
Sir, there is one question on the syntax where we are writing definition match SF. Why haven't we written here self?
I mean,
can
self
we
is just a placeholder. Instead of self,
placeholder, so
you can
we
write
can write
anything.
anything. Okay,
Any-
okay, got it.
Sir, all the constructor within a class will be with the same tab.
Sorry?
All the constructor within a class are on the like single tab, right? If we are going to put
Yeah,
two tabs on the second constructor, it will not work.
it will not work.
Okay.
Sir, in the def match, SF is the object of match function for calling the name.
SF is basically this book one. So when I write book one dot match, SF is book one, name is AD.
Okay.
Use anything, right? Use your name if you want, doesn't matter. It's just the placeholder. It is a placeholder. Just like name of a variable, you can name it anything, right? Can you use what?
A name
What is a name?
that you have defined
Oh no, I mean a name you have to tell, right? What is a name? A name is belongs to the self object, right? So you have to write a self dot. Anything, yeah. First, it knows that the first input is the object. You can name it anything. Okay. Then you'll have to return, right? You have to return something. What you could have done is, instead of just directly writing a return, you could have said if sf dot author is equal to name. I need to restart my system. I think I have not restarted in 2019. You could have also done that.
String type.
This will be a string type. Okay. Cool. So I will stop here for the day. Now, what I need you guys to do is